Haidong. In this video, we're going to talk about aspects of Form 8. The last couple forms are just a bunch of hard turns, right? So Form 5 is got all power, Form 6 is talking about fluidity and efficiency, Form 7 is about being tactical and being able to strategize again with your movements. Form 8 takes yet another turn, right? So Form 8, once again, takes an earlier concept of fluidity and can add it to you, as well as maintaining that tactician's ability, right? So now that you've learned Form 7, you need to keep that idea in mind for every single form, right? As well as all the previous ones, but again, once that's really deep-rooted in your brain, it's going to be in every single form, right? So being able to see what's going on, what's being thrown at you, how you're deflecting it, all that fun stuff. But Form 8 has a few fun ideas I want to play with, so let's take a look. The first idea is deception, right? So this is kind of late in the game, which is actually kind of why I like this, because especially a lot of newbies, especially when they start sparring, all they want to do is like, ha-ha, right? Or ha-ha, stuff like that, right? Versus like, I can still cut through that first ha, right? So what I really like about, again, what Gumdo is doing is the really first major deceptions, again, the first kind of like, of that nature, are pretty late, right? So Form 8 is the last one you do in order to test for first degree, right? So allegedly after this form, allegedly you should be able to, again, join your ranks and all that fun stuff if you watched my video on what I think black belt means. But yeah, so let's take a look, right? So the idea is deception. Again, I really like that's late, right? Because again, now you've honed your skills, now you know how to use them, right? So the idea is in the very beginning, right? The premise of it is it's actually two people, right? The idea is I'm coming in here, I'm kind of low, I'm kind of checking both of them, I'm straight on, right? So I'm not kind of like looking here and then I'm going to pretend I'm going to cut. The idea is like, all right, I see both of you, I'm here. So notice also what my feet are doing, right? For example, if I do want to strike you and I step this way, I'm going to have to do kind of a lot more if I do want to do that spin uppercut, right? Versus you, I would need to do a big old step this way. Versus by going straight forward, I'm actually kind of cut the distance, right? If I'm trying to spin uppercut you, all I need to do is turn about, again, like 120 degrees, 3 pi over 4, this way, right? If I want to cut you, probably not with a spin uppercut, I can just step forward, right? So you can probably imagine is, all right, I'm here, my stance is kind of showing me kind of aiming for you, right? Because like, all right, it's easier for me to just draw this way as opposed to like, right? So it's like, all right, so that person's like, all right, I got this guy, and you're like, bang! And kind of clearing off that way, right? So again, not the most obvious deception, right? But again, it's playing on ideas, right? So I'm coming low, I'm getting ready for this big, powerful cut, and then, again, this person sees me open to them, they probably think I'm good. As I'm turning, they're probably getting ready for that cut, I'm gonna cut them, and then face off in that nice big clearing diagonal, right? So again, obviously using those two cuts, obviously maybe cut someone, as well as, again, make sure I have my distance, right? So yeah, so there's that idea, right? And also being able to, again, so this is going to be partially deception, right? But it's also going to be our second one, which is about our change in elevation, right? We change in elevation quite a lot in this stance, in this form, right? So obviously in the very beginning of the form, I'm in a really small short stance, and I'm getting ready to strike. Later, we actually do our famous eagle stance, what I'm going to try to do, right? The idea is I just cut someone here, I turn, clear, they're coming in, I'm going to come low, I want to make sure I'm actually in camera, and cut. Right, so I'm actually deep in that stance this way, I'm kind of leaning as far forward onto my knee as possible, and a nice big rainbow cut. So I'm trying to go underneath their cut, so by the time they actually would hit, all their momentum was spent, I go underneath, jugular, right? And then from here, a nice elegant turn high guard. There's a lot of that elevation, right? Now elevation is also going to help you again with your deceptions, right? Because if I'm really, really small and suddenly I'm kind of like, a big motion, very different, right? So again, small motion, but again, big arcing rainbow cut, right? So again, playing with these contrasts, right? Again, small stance, big cut, and all that fun stuff. And the third thing that I would like to mention is that downward thrust. I did actually make a video about this in the past because this is something I actually got wrong in the past. I was very happy about it. But the idea is, so again, if you're not familiar with it, right? So if I'm kind of facing off someone, I see someone there checking, you dead. I'm gonna come in and finish, right? And I also talked about, again, in that past video, but I'll kind of re-mention here, is this is very easy on my body, right? Now, obviously, the shorter the sword, the less it makes sense, right? But obviously, again, if we're using a sangsu gun, which is, again, the really, really long sword, which also takes the name sangsu, right? It makes total sense, right? So someone's on the ground, I'm, again, assuming this is a really long sword, but, right, this would actually be able to puncture all the way down. If I really need to, I could sink in, and again, without exerting any small muscle groups, stab, right? So you'd be able to do that as well. Now the reason I kind of like this is, first of all, it's a really different move, right? So pretty much everything else in the form, maybe with the exception of the equal stance rainbow cut, we've seen in some capacity, right? Maybe also this might be a new move as well. So it's actually a few new moves. But the idea of this one is just so different from everything else, right? So not only are we just stabbing someone on the ground, we also have this weird roll, using again that whole body to stab, right? So it's like, all right, why is that so different? And if you again have learned more forms, this stab is really, really, really prominent in form 12, right? Now form 12 has its own own agenda, but with this introduction, right? So first of all, it kind of reintroduces the idea of using a heavier weapon or a longer weapon at the very least. We're stabbing down. This actually makes more sense, right? As well as right, you can pop it out a little bit more, as well as why you do this. So if you've ever tried to actually block a crosscut or a stab or something using this particular block, you're gonna notice it hurts your hand, right? Now again, my own interpretation of that is, this is just to get momentum behind a longer, heavier weapon for me to throw that big one-handed crosscut, right? Now that said, again, kind of take a weird move, again, the weirdest move in the form, and kind of extrapolate why it's there, right? So just like with all the other ones, we're taking a previous idea, right? So if you remember in form 5, we're talking about, again, that person falling as they jump over them. There are still people that I cut as I was going through that I want to make sure I've finished the job, right? So I'm taking, again, previous ideas there, taking the idea of using a bigger, heavier weapon from form 2, right? Because we're using that big momentum cut. I'm going to use the idea of really getting that momentum behind my sword before I do that cut. So again, this is a nice culmination. This one move, that one combination, is a nice combination of, interesting, of a whole bunch of different ideas, right? Kind of like, again, leading up to this moment of that weirdness. So that's kind of why I like that particular move. Now there's going to be so much more to discuss with these forms. So this is the first set, right? So the first set is going to be obviously 1 through 8 because those are things going for first degree, right? Now obviously there's going to be probably a good amount of, again, going back through these, again, adding even more ideas, right? Because 3 per form, you can probably imagine there are more than 3 aspects to, again, entertain per form, right? But I'm going to keep going on, right? So I'm going to try to go as high as I legally can before I kind of make my second round, right? That's the idea, right? So again, take these ideas, interpolate them, right? So again, these are all things that allegedly by the time you're hitting first on, right? So we're testing for first on, you should have all these ideas, again, pretty embedded in your brain, right? So I guess with that, so if you're testing soon, right? So good luck, because it's always good to have that, this final, culmination of all of your effort, right, into one form. Now that said, I think form 13, so again, Shimsung, for those of you who have learned it, is really the true culmination of all the Sangsu, but we'll get that in 5 more videos, right? 13, we're on 8 right now. So I guess with that, so stay smart, right? So make sure you can do math. That may not have been correct. But so stay safe, keep training, and stay humble. Haidong.